I never thought I would recount this, but my life, once defined by the predictable routines of motherhood, took a turn into such uncharted territory that it feels like a fever dream. My name is Sarah Miller, and at 40, I had spent the better part of 2 decades as a single mother. My son, Caleb, is now 22, a grown man, yet in my eyes, he remains the boy I raised alone. We had always been inseparable, a 2-person team against the world, bound by years of mutual reliance. However, that intimacy, once a source of comfort, recently evolved into something far more volatile. Note: please subscribe to my channel to ensure you never miss these fascinating true stories. If you enjoy this narrative, please hit the like button to show your support, and make sure to watch until the very end. The conclusion is as intense as it is unexpected. It began on a night bitten by a sharp winter chill. Caleb had been pushing himself to his limit, balancing a demanding full-time job with a rigorous academic schedule. When he finally stumbled through the door, he looked hollowed out, pallid, weary, and clearly near the point of collapse. "You look absolutely drained, Caleb," I said, worry tightening my chest. "You've been pushing yourself too hard." "I'm just exhausted, Mom," he replied, his voice barely a murmur. "I can't seem to warm up." The house was slow to surrender to the furnace, and the air inside remained biting. Concerned, I told him to lie down on my bed, covering him with the thickest wool blanket from the closet to shield him from the draft. It started as a routine act of care, a mother looking after her child. But as I lay down beside him to check his temperature, the atmosphere shifted. He turned toward me, perhaps seeking the residual warmth of my body. It was an instinctive move, the kind I had seen 1,000 times during his childhood. But this time, it held an unfamiliar weight. He pulled me into an embrace, his arms wrapping around me with a lingering, protective intensity. I froze, caught off guard by the intimacy, yet I found myself paralyzed. I didn't pull away. I could feel his steady, rhythmic breathing against my skin, and soon, the silence in the room became deafening. I told myself it was innocent, a byproduct of his fatigue, but my pulse hammered against my ribs. When he moved again, pressing closer under the heavy blanket, the air between us became electric, charged with a tension that was impossible to ignore. Then I felt it, a hardness pressing against me, a sudden jolting realization that made my breath catch in my throat. My heart raced, a frantic bird in a cage. Was he aware of it? Or was this just a biological reaction to our proximity? "Caleb?" I whispered, though I didn't dare say more. He lifted his head, his eyes meeting mine. There was a softness in his gaze that felt like a question, a silent probe into the boundaries we had always maintained. His fingertips brushed against my arm, a touch so light it could have been accidental, yet it sent a shiver racing through my spine. He didn't look like my little boy anymore. In that dim, hushed bedroom, he looked like a man who was regarding me with a hunger that defied logic. I felt trapped in the amber of that moment, suspended between the mother I was and the woman the tension was forcing me to become. Just as the silence reached a breaking point, he reached up, his fingers gently tucking a stray lock of hair behind my ear. It was a gesture of such exquisite, devastating tenderness that it broke something inside me. Suddenly, he pulled back, as if the reality of the situation had crashed down on him. He scrambled into a sitting position, his face flushing deep crimson. "I'm sorry, Mom," he stammered, rubbing the back of his neck, his eyes darting away. "I didn't mean to make things weird. I'm just so tired." "It's all right, Caleb," I replied, my voice sounding shaky even to my own ears. We've just been the only two people in this house for so long. Sometimes, that kind of isolation plays tricks on us. The spell was shattered by the sharp, insistent peal of the doorbell. The intrusion was jarring, a violent reminder of the outside world. I stood up, smoothing my clothes, and found our neighbor, Robert Bob Harrison, standing on the porch. Bob was a fixture in our lives, a kind man who had always been there to help. But as he stood there with a friendly smile, his eyes lingered on mine with a curiosity that made me feel exposed. "Hey, Sarah," Bob said, his voice booming in the quiet night. "I noticed the house lights were dim. Everything okay with the heater?" "Oh, thank you, Bob," I said, leaning against the doorframe to hide my trembling hands. "I'd appreciate you taking a look." As Bob moved to the heater, I caught a glimpse of Caleb in the hallway. He was standing in the shadows, his arms crossed over his chest, his expression dark and guarded. When his eyes met mine, I saw a flicker of something raw. Jealousy? Possession? It terrified me. After Bob left, promising to return if we needed anything else, the house felt different. The air was heavy with the things we hadn't said. Caleb didn't wait. He walked past me, retreating to his room. Later that night, I heard a soft knock at my door. It was Caleb. He came in and sat on the edge of the bed, the distance between us now feeling like an ocean. "Mom, I don't know what's happening," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "I don't want to lose what we have, but I can't pretend that what I felt tonight was just normal." "I know," I admitted, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "We need space, Caleb. We need to breathe." "I'm sorry," he whispered, leaning his head on my shoulder. A final, desperate attempt to reclaim the innocence of the past. We sat there in the dark, two people lost in the shifting tides of their own lives. We didn't have the answers, and for the first time, I realized that some stories don't have happy endings. They just have chapters that you are forced to turn, even when you aren't ready to let go.